Feel the high-voltage energy of a story that refused to be silenced by the passing of time. We bring you the electric reality of life's most intense confrontations, wrapped in a cinematic glow that never fades. Hit that subscribe button now and power up your imagination with us.
The night my brother got engaged, I was sitting at a folding table in the corner of my apartment, eating instant noodles and watching my radiator make that clanking sound it always made when the temperature dropped below freezing. My phone buzzed. It was my mother. "We're having a celebration dinner on Saturday, for your brother and Vanessa. You should come." Not "we'd love for you to come," not "I miss you." Just "you should come," like it was an obligation, like showing up was the least I could do. I told her I'd think about it. I didn't sleep that night. Not because I was excited, because I already knew what Saturday was going to look like. I'd sat through enough of those dinners to know the script by heart. My brother Marcus at the head of the table. Vanessa next to him, showing off whatever new thing he'd bought her that month. My mother refilling everyone's wine glass except mine, and me, somewhere near the end of the table, answering polite questions about my little art thing, while they moved on to more interesting topics before I finished my sentence. I was 31 years old. To my family, I was a cautionary tale. What they didn't know, what I had never told a single one of them, was that my little art thing had become something else entirely. 4 years ago, I started licensing my digital design work to a boutique agency in Austin. 2 years ago, that agency was acquired by a larger firm. 1 year ago, I quietly bought a controlling stake in that firm using funds from a holding company my accountant had helped me set up. The firm had contracts with 11 Fortune 500 brands. Our last valuation put us at just over $900 million. I owned an art company that was about to cross $1 billion. My family thought I was broke. I kept it that way on purpose, not out of spite, not at first. It started because I was embarrassed. A woman building a digital art business in a family of lawyers and finance executives felt like a joke. Then I kept it quiet because I wanted to see how they treated someone they believed had nothing. That experiment taught me more about the people I grew up with than 30 years of holiday dinners ever had. I called my mother back the next morning and told her I'd come on Saturday. She sounded surprised. She covered it quickly with a tight little, "Wonderful." But I heard it, that half-second pause where she'd expected me to say no. She'd wanted me to say no. My absence would have been easier to explain than my presence. I showed up at the restaurant at 7. My mother had booked a private room at one of those places downtown, with linen napkins and a sommelier who comes by every 12 minutes. Marcus was already there. He stood up when I walked in, gave me a hug that lasted exactly 1 second, and said, "Hey, glad you could make it," the way you'd say it to a coworker at a company happy hour. Vanessa smiled at me from across the table. She had the kind of smile that didn't reach her eyes. I'd known her for 2 years. I had never once seen her smile with her whole face. My father was there too, sitting at the end of the table with his bourbon, looking at his phone. He glanced up when I came in, gave me a nod, and went back to whatever he was reading. That was about average for us. My aunt, my mother's younger sister Rosalie, was the only one who stood up and hugged me like she meant it. She held my face in her hands for a second and said, "You look tired, sweetheart." I told her I'd been working a lot. She said, "Good for you," and meant it, even though she had no idea what that work actually was. We ordered. The conversation moved the way it always moved in that family, from Marcus's new condo, to Vanessa's gallery event, to my father's golf handicap, to my mother's new landscaping project. I ate my sea bass and answered the questions that came my way with short, polite answers. Someone asked if I was still doing the freelance stuff. I said yes. They moved on. Then Vanessa set her wine glass down and looked at me. "You know," she said with the measured tone of someone who had prepared the sentence in advance, "Marcus and I have been thinking about our wedding venue. We found this incredible space in the Arts District. It's a converted warehouse, very your kind of thing." I waited. "The owner is asking for a full deposit up front," she said. "It's about $40,000. We were wondering." She glanced at Marcus, who was suddenly very interested in his stake, "if you might want to contribute, as a gift, for the wedding." The table went quiet. My mother was looking at her plate. My father had put his phone down. Rosalie was looking at me. They were asking me, the family charity case, the one who ate instant noodles in a 30-square-foot apartment, to pay for their wedding venue. I looked at Vanessa. I looked at Marcus. He didn't say anything. He just cut into his steak, $40,000, I said. To give it as an investment, Vanessa said and smiled. In family. I picked up my water glass and took a slow sip. I set it back down. I said, let me think about it, and the conversation moved on. But something had shifted in me. Not rage, I was past rage with these people. It was something quieter, more like a decision. 3 weeks later, my mother called me again. The wedding was being planned for April. The venue had been booked. Marcus and Vanessa had covered the deposit themselves, apparently, and were now managing a guest list of 240 people. The reception would be at the Alderton, a boutique hotel in the hills outside the city. Beautiful property. Old oak trees. A restored barn that cost $12,000 to rent for an afternoon. Your father and I are hosting the rehearsal dinner, my mother said. At the Alderton as well. We'd like you to come early that weekend. Help set up. Help set up. Not be part of the bridal party. Not give a toast. Help set up. Like I was the catering staff, I said I'd be there. What my mother didn't know, what none of them knew, was that I had a meeting scheduled for the following Tuesday with the Alderton's ownership group. My holding company had been in quiet negotiations for 4 months to acquire a minority stake in the Alderton's parent hospitality brand. The deal hadn't closed yet, but it was close. The rehearsal dinner was on a Friday evening in early April. The property was genuinely beautiful. I'll give them that. String lights and oak trees, a long table set up on the lawn, a string quartet playing somewhere near the water feature. The kind of event that takes months to plan and costs more than most people's annual salary. I showed up at 3 in the afternoon, as requested. My mother put me to work arranging centerpieces. I didn't complain. I arranged the centerpieces. I made small talk with the florist. I refilled a water pitcher when someone asked me to. I played my part. By 6 o'clock, the guests had arrived. I changed in the bathroom, put on the dress I'd brought, simple, dark blue, nothing that would draw attention, and found my seat at the end of the long table. Not the family end, the other end, near the catering staff. Marcus gave a speech. It was about legacy, about building something that lasts. He thanked my father for teaching him what it meant to work hard. He thanked my mother for teaching him grace under pressure. He didn't mention me. I drank my wine. I smiled when I was supposed to smile. I applauded when everyone else applauded. Then Vanessa's mother stood up. She was a tall woman named Patricia, with good posture and a way of speaking that made everything sound like a verdict. She thanked the family for the beautiful evening. She said she was so proud to be joining such an accomplished family. She looked down the table and made a point of naming everyone. Marcus, my mother, my father, Rosalie. And then her eyes landed on me for a half second and she moved on, mid-sentence, like I wasn't there. I set my glass down. I had a decision to make. I could leave, walk out quietly, go back to my apartment, and let the weekend pass like every other weekend I'd spent in the margins of my own family's life. Or I could do something I'd been waiting to do for a long time. Not out of revenge, out of clarity. Because I was 31 years old and I was tired of pretending I had nothing when I had built something extraordinary, and I was tired of letting the people who were supposed to love me use my silence against me. I reached into my bag and pulled out my phone. I found the number from my attorney, a woman named Catherine who had handled every significant business transaction I'd made in the past 3 years. I typed a short message, the Alderton deal? I want to move to close. This week, I sent it. Then I put my phone back in my bag. I sat through the rest of the rehearsal dinner. I helped carry chairs at the end of the night. I drove home in the dark with the windows down and the radio off. Catherine called me the next morning. The deal could close by Wednesday. The ownership group had been motivated sellers for months. They just needed someone to push the final terms. She walked me through the structure. My holding company would acquire a 23% stake in the parent brand, which included the Alderton and 4 other properties. The terms included a standard management consultation clause, which meant that starting Wednesday, any major event or booking at the Alderton would technically require sign-off from a representative of my entity. I told her to close the deal. The wedding was on Saturday. Wednesday came and went. The paperwork was clean. By Thursday morning, I was a part owner of the hotel where my brother was getting married in 48 hours. I didn't tell anyone. I got dressed on Saturday morning, drove to the Alderton, and went to the suite my mother had arranged for family members to use before the ceremony. Vanessa's bridesmaids were there. My mother was there. Rosalie was there, pouring mimosas and telling a story about her vacation that no one was listening to. I sat down. Someone handed me a glass. I smiled. I played the part. The ceremony was in the garden. White chairs, a floral arch, a pastor who spoke for exactly 11 minutes. Marcus cried a little when Vanessa walked down the aisle. I'll give him that too. Whatever was between them, that was real. The reception moved inside to the main hall. The toasts started. My father gave one. Vanessa's brother gave one. Marcus's college roommate gave one that went on too long and ended with an inside joke no one outside their friend group understood. I was not asked to give a toast. Then the music started and the dinner was served, and I found my seat at table 11. Not the family table. Not even close. Table 11 was near the back, next to a column with Vanessa's coworkers and a distant cousin from out of state who didn't know anyone either. I ate my dinner. I was pleasant. I talked to the distant cousin about where she'd flown in from. I drank my water. Then Marcus came by doing the rounds and stopped at my table. He leaned down and said, quietly so no one would hear, "Hey, this is a long shot, but Vanessa's ring is missing." I looked at him. "Her grandmother's ring," he said. "The vintage one. She was wearing it earlier and now it's gone. Were you near her stuff at all today?" I understood what he was asking. He wasn't asking if I'd seen it. He was asking if I'd taken it. "Marcus," I said. "I'm not saying anything," he said. "I'm just asking." "No," I said. "I wasn't near her things." He straightened up, nodded once, and walked away. 20 minutes later, the hotel manager came to find me. His name was Gerald. I had met him on Wednesday, when Catherine and I came for the closing walkthrough. He recognized me immediately. He was extremely uncomfortable. "Ms." he started. "I know," I said. He lowered his voice. "Mr. and Mrs. Vane, the groom's parents have asked us to assist in a search of guests' belongings. Specifically, some members of the party have expressed concern that I took the ring," I said. He looked like he wanted to be anywhere else on earth. "I want you to know that this property does not, that we would never." "Gerald," I said. "It's fine. Let's go talk to my family." I stood up. I walked with him across the reception hall. A few people noticed, then more. By the time we reached the family table, it was quiet enough that the string quartet's song choice felt suddenly very loud. My mother was sitting between my father and Vanessa's mother, Patricia. Vanessa was there, eyes red from crying. Marcus had his arm around her. They all looked at me the way people look at someone who has already been tried and convicted in their own minds. "Where is it?" Vanessa said. "I don't have it," I said. "You were in the suite this morning," she said. "You are the only one, Vanessa." I kept my voice even. "I didn't take your ring." "Then where is it?" "My mother." Her voice was tight and low. I looked around the table. "My father, Marcus." "Patricia." My Aunt Rosalie, who was standing slightly apart, watching with her hands pressed together. "I'd like to propose something," I said. "Before this goes any further." I took out my phone. I pulled up the contact for the Alderton's head of security, a woman named Simone, who I'd also met on Wednesday. I called her. She picked up on the second ring. "Simone," I said. "This is the stakeholder who came in on Wednesday. We have a situation in the main reception hall. Can you pull the suite footage from this morning between 9 and 11, all angles?" A pause. "Of course," she said. "Give me 8 minutes." I put my phone down on the table. "What did you just do?" Marcus said. "I asked for the security footage," I said. "From this morning. From the suite where Vanessa's things were." "You can't just," he started. "I can," I said. "I'm sorry, I should have explained sooner. I'm a part owner of this property. The deal closed Wednesday. So when I asked for the footage, I was asking as someone with the authority to access it." The table was completely silent. My mother's face had gone the color of the white tablecloth. Vanessa had stopped crying. She was staring at me. "A part owner," Marcus said. 23% of the parent brand, I said, "which includes this property and 4 others." "What are you talking about?" my father said. It was the most direct thing he'd said to me in years. "I've been running a holding company," I said, "for the last 4 years. It started with my design work. It grew." I paused. "I should have told you. I didn't, because..." I looked at Marcus. "I wanted to understand who you all were when you thought I had nothing. And now I do." Gerald came back 8 minutes later with Simone. She had her tablet. She turned it so the table could see the screen. The footage was clear, high resolution, 9:47 in the morning. Vanessa's bridesmaid, a woman named Tara who I had met exactly once, opening Vanessa's clutch, removing the ring, and sliding it into the pocket of her own robe. Vanessa made a sound I won't describe. Marcus stood up so fast his chair fell backward. Tara was found at the bar. The ring was in her jacket pocket. She was escorted from the property within the hour. Vanessa called her family. The police were called. The documentation Simone had pulled was clean and time-stamped and would hold up in any courtroom in the state. I sat back down at table 11. Rosalie came and found me 20 minutes later. She sat in the empty chair next to me and didn't say anything for a while. Then she said, "How long?" 4 years, I said. She nodded slowly. "And you never said anything." "I wanted to see," I said. She reached over and put her hand over mine. "I know," she said. "I'm sorry it gave you what it did." My mother came to find me near the end of the night. The reception had mostly recovered. People were dancing, the bar was open, the bride and groom were moving through the crowd. She looked like she'd aged 5 years since dinner. "I want to understand," she said. "I know," I said. "Why didn't you tell us?" I thought about every dinner, every question about the freelance stuff, every time Marcus got a congratulations toast and I got a polite nod, every phone call that started with "you" should come instead of "I miss you," because I needed to know if you'd treat me the same when I had nothing, I said. "And you did." She opened her mouth, closed it. "I'm not angry," I said, and I meant it. "I'm just done pretending I'm less than I am so that everyone else in this family can feel comfortable. I built something real. It took everything I had, and I did it while sitting at table 11. She didn't say anything after that. I left before the cake was cut. I drove home with the windows down, same as I had on Friday night. But this time I turned the radio on. Some old song I half knew played through the dark, and I sang along with the parts I remembered, and I let the rest of it wash over me. I was 31 years old. I had built a company worth nearly $1 billion alone, in the margins of a family who never once thought to ask what I was actually doing with my time. And I was just getting started. I've thought a lot about what I would have done differently, and honestly, not much. Not because I'm proud of letting it go on as long as it did, but because I needed to know. That might sound calculated, and maybe it was, but there's a difference between being calculating and being honest with yourself about what you actually need to understand before you can move forward. I needed to see my family clearly, not through the version of them I built in my head since childhood, the one where they were just hard to please, where they just had high standards, where they just needed time to come around. I needed to see the version that existed when they believed I had nothing left to offer them. What I saw was enough. Here's what I've learned about how actions compound over time, the same way money does. Every small dismissal, every dinner where Marcus got a toast and I got a nod, every phone call that started with "you" should come instead of "I miss you." Those weren't isolated moments. They were a pattern, and patterns, if you follow them long enough, will always show you the truth about who someone is. My family's pattern told me exactly where I stood in the hierarchy of their concern, and the thing about seeing that clearly is you can't unsee it. I don't say that with bitterness. I say it as a fact, the way you'd know that it's raining outside. It's raining. You can be upset that it's raining, or you can put on a coat. What got me through those 4 years, the real ones, the ones where I was actually building something while sitting in a 30-square-foot apartment eating instant noodles, wasn't anger at my family. It was something quieter. It was the refusal to let other people's perception of me become my perception of myself. That's harder than it sounds. When the people who raised you look at you and see a failure, there's a pull to believe them. They knew you before you knew yourself. They have authority in your mind that no one else has. Resisting that, holding on to what you know to be true about your own work, your own capacity, your own worth. That's not stubbornness. That's the most important thing I've ever done. Rosalie asked me once, that night, if I regretted not telling them sooner. I told her no, and I meant it, not because the silence served me strategically, though it did, but because who I became in that silence was someone I actually respect. I built a company in the margins. I made decisions under pressure without anyone to validate them. I learned what I was capable of without an audience. That matters in a way that no dinner toast ever could. What happened to Tara, Vanessa's bridesmaid, the woman who took the ring, was a consequence of her own choices meeting the moment they finally had nowhere to hide. The cameras were there before I ever bought into that hotel. The truth was always going to come out. I just happened to be the person with the authority to ask for the footage. That's not luck. That's what happens when you spend 4 years building something real instead of performing the version of yourself other people find comfortable. And my family, sitting at that table, watching a woman they'd seated near the catering staff pull up security footage as a part owner of the property. I hope they felt the full weight of that moment, not because I wanted to hurt them, but because growth requires friction, and sometimes the kindest thing you can give someone is an undeniable moment of clarity. I drove home that night with the windows down. I was 31 years old, and I was just getting started.